Hey guys, Mr. Whitman here. We're going to go ahead and read an article about Cinco de Mayo, 7 things you may not know about Cinco de Mayo. And it's a very interesting article, pretty much explaining what Cinco de Mayo is, some of the myths and legends that come around it, and whether or not it's actually a real holiday in Mexico. I know Cinco de Mayo, when you guys get this, had just passed a couple days ago, but it's still interesting nonetheless. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to read this to you if you need someone to read it or you want to, read along to someone else reading it out loud. Okay, class, so let's get started. The title of this article is 7 Things You May Not Know About Cinco de Mayo. Look at the cute little kids. Right, children participate in a 2014 Cinco de Mayo celebration organized by the Committee for Awareness of Mexican American Culture at Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. Right, this is written by Jesse Greenspan for History.com. Published in 2017. It's going to be 885 words. Cinco de Mayo has become enormously popular in the United States, often serving as a reason to throw a gran fiesta. Yet, despite its ubiquity, the holiday remains widely misunderstood. In fact, many people still falsely believe it's Mexico's Independence Day, rather than a celebration of the undermanned Mexican Army's 1862 victory over France at the Battle of Puebla. To mark the event's anniversary, here are 7 other things you may not know about Cinco de Mayo's origins. Number 1, Mexico had just gotten over a civil war in 1862. The so-called War for Reform broke out in 1858, soon after liberals drafted a new constitution aimed at reducing the power and influence of the Catholic Church. During the armed conflict, Mexico had 2 governments, a conservative one in Mexico City led by General Felix Zuluaga, and a liberal one in Veracruz led by Benito Juarez, president of the Supreme Court. The conservatives, who had the support of the Pope, won a series of initial skirmishes, but the liberals controlled the ports and were therefore better able to equip the troops. They emerged victorious in January 1861 when they retook Mexico City. The country remained starkly divided, however, with conservatives plotting their revenge. Number 2, European troops invaded because Mexico was broke. After the War of Reform, Mexico had virtually no money in its treasury and owed tens of millions of dollars to foreign debtors. The sale of expropriated church property brought very little relief. As a result, newly elected President Juarez suspended payment for all foreign debt for 2 years, a move that prompted an immediate backlash from Spain, France, and Great Britain. With the United States too consumed by the Civil War to enforce the Monroe Doctrine, troops from those 3 European powers began arriving in Veracruz in late 1861. Spain and Great Britain almost immediately withdrew, but about 6,000 French troops pushed inland toward the capital, backed by Mexico's vanquished conservative leaders. Number 3, France was considered extremely potent militarily when it attacked Mexico. In 1862, the French had one of the best armies in the world. Arriving at Puebla on May 4th, they were coming off a series of victories in Southeast Asia and Northern Africa, and were loaded with firepower, including long-range rifles that put the Mexicans' creaky muskets to shame. They were so overconfident, in fact, that they didn't even bother to properly prepare their artillery. On the morning of May 5th, the French tried to intimidate the Mexicans with screeching bogle calls and advanced bayonet maneuvers. But after a full day of fighting, including 3 unsuccessful uphill charges, they were forced to retreat due to heavy casualties. Number 4, after losing the Battle of Puebla, France went on to win the war. Mexico's victory at Puebla slowed, but did not stop France's assault. In the wake of the battle, an infuriated Emperor Napoleon III ordered that almost 30,000 more troops be sent to Mexico. This time around, under a new commander, they were able to overrun Puebla and easily conquer Mexico City. Juarez and his supporters then fled to the mountains to conduct guerrilla operations, while Napoleon III installed Ferdinand Maximilian von Habsburg, second in line to the Austro-Hungarian throne, as Mexico's ruler, also known as his cousin. The French occupation of Mexico was short-lived. Back in France, Napoleon III was growing increasingly concerned with Prussia. Fresh off victories against Denmark and Austria, would next try to reclaim the perpetually disputed territories of Alsace and Lorraine. Meanwhile, the Civil War had wrapped up, and U.S. officials were exerting diplomatic pressures on the French and supplying weapons to Juarez's army. With the coffers running low, Napoleon III decided in 1866 to end France's occupation of Mexico. Maximilian unwisely stayed and briefly fought on, surrendering only after his troops were routed at Querétaro. On June 19, 1867, he and his top generals were executed by firing squad. Porfirio Diaz began making a name for himself at Puebla. Porfirio Diaz, Mexico's longest-serving president, was a relatively unknown cavalry commander until the Battle of Puebla, where he outflanked the French on their third charge and sent them into a disorderly retreat. After the next few years, he won battles at Oaxaca and elsewhere. Following the war, however, Diaz became so disillusioned with his one-time friend Juarez that he unsuccessfully ran for president against him. He later launched a couple of coup attempts, finally seizing power in 1876. Except for one 4-year break, his reign lasted until 1911, when he was finally deposed by the Mexican Revolution. Cinco de Mayo is more widely celebrated in parts of the United States than in Mexico. Juarez declared Cinco de Mayo a holiday immediately after the Battle of Puebla, but for many Mexicans, it has always taken a backseat to such events as September 16th Independence Day, which commemorates the start of hostilities against Spanish rule in 1810. In the United States, on the other hand, Cinco de Mayo gained traction during the 1960s, when Chicano activists began looking for a way to honor their history and culture. Today, the biggest Cinco de Mayo celebrations are held in U.S. cities with large Hispanic populations, such as Los Angeles, which every year attracts hundreds of thousands of people to its Fiesta Broadway Festival. See you soon, class. Bye-bye.